then it goes down into Littleton.
The
It says,
road.
yeah, it says
Yeah,
welcome to,
but
yeah.
the lots on that side are.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, on both sides, I believe.
You can take and scan it right now.
All right, so
So I
we're gonna
don't think there's
postpone
anything-
decision on this and
So we find on top of Jesse and
see what the next steps are and.
basically you want it sold, so it's just a matter how you get it sold.
Okay. Okay.
You might wanna ask her too, Tina, about the one with the house.
She has a note on one that was gonna be deeded either later this fall or early next year.
Oh.
Is that the one probably?
I don't know, one, no,
That may
one
be
I
the
think
one
we've
with
had for a
vandalism.
while and we tried to, sell it, but we tried to sell it with a realtor and that didn't work out. Remember she was saying that and,
Yeah.
and then the realtor got all involved and the guy next door wanted to buy it, so we didn't do anything with it. So,
That's the status.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll ask for that.
I'll
I
take
know
a
there were
walk
two
up there and look at it.
properties and we decided
I'm
that we
sorry?
do this.
I'll take a walk up there and look at it, and I know which lot it is.
Oh, okay.
I took a picture of it, so I know about how far.
Which one is he going to look at?
The 5 acres.
Okay. Looking for was the, email from DES.
Do we all have that or just you have that?
Is that the one you just photocopied?
No, there was another one. From,
Oh, that one?
William, here it is. Got it.
I got it.
Yeah. Okay. So this
Jerry.
is from, Timothy, did I have it wrong name? Timothy Drew, Administrator, Public Information and Permitting Officer of the Commissioner, New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. And in the recent past, you have indicated desire for staff, and I'm not sure it was us as a board, but desire for staff from the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services to attend a local Dalton meeting to discuss the overall process of environmental permitting in New Hampshire. If you could provide me with some dates and times for this meeting, we would be more than happy to schedule the presentation accordingly. Please bear in mind that our presentation will be general in nature and will be based on past experience, the law, and their associated administrative rules for facilities located in and in operation across the state. It will not involve comments or any specific references to current or future projects. So is this something that would be useful? Is it something we want to address at a later date?
I know there were some residents who were interested in talking to them, but I don't know how much of an interest it was. Anybody here want to talk to DES?
I know Tim Drew is out for an extended absence. I called today on, so I got some correspondence before I saw that. But he did give me his second in command's name.
Okay.
Follow up with it if you want.
I think at some point it would be
Yeah,
Nobody's gonna hear from them.
wanna revisit it at a later date?
I'm thinking it's,
Yeah.
it's so, we've got enough other things to do right
Yeah.
now that I'm thinking that's
With zoning,
with the zoning and the zoning board and,
I think one,
but I think would be good.
they would like to be there too for the zoning board to hear them, EPA, maybe they
Mhm.
have questions,
Yeah.
so we'll wait until it's established.
Mhm. Okay.
You have an idea when you might want it brought forward to again? Other than the calendar?
Shall we say a month?
That would be September,
I'm saying go October, November.
I think October, yeah. Maybe we can put out some feelers to see how many people really wanna come and
Come and.
listen to it, yeah,
Right, yeah.
yeah.
You know, with that in mind, I think it was a couple months ago when Casella was actually here speaking to the board, you asked for copies of their presentation to DES, that was May 30th. Did they ever get back to you? They said they would get something to you in 30
Yeah, she'll make
days.
copies of that, yeah.
They did,
Oh.
yeah.
Is that behind closed doors then, or?
No, it's
No,
right on the,
no, it's, we can, would you like a copy of it?
Well, no, I have a copy, I just
Okay.
don't remember them coming to the select board and
No,
presenting
they
that.
emailed it, they emailed a copy to us.
Okay. I just don't know if that was public information, so. That,
it was in
Yes.
public. We asked for it in public.
We asked for
Yeah.
it.
you asked for
So
it,
the
we just hadn't had
information's
confirmation that you'd gotten anything back from them, that's all. I'm asking for
Yes.
clarification.
Yes, we did.
Okay, good to know.
Okay, so we'll look at redressing, talking with DES in October, or having them come to talk to us. Okay. Thank you.
Maybe Jesse can remember the residents that had asked for it originally, and we could, reach out to them and let them know that we're planning something.
Okay.
Did you get this one from White Mountain Regionals?
But they haven't set a date for that.
I didn't see that.
This was originally dated July 30th.
And they're waiting for the ZBA.
They just want to come and meet and talk to you about the additions they plan to make.
The $12 million addition?
Okay. So this is,
One and a win, they come.
right, so administration, that's broad, is interested in coming to a select board meeting, to have an informal meeting with the board to discuss White Mountain Regional High School's 2020 building renovation project, which is slated to go to vote at the March meeting. You let me know when the next meeting is and if there are any time slots available. They don't say how much time they need, but this could be a lot of discussion.
Depends on whether they do the detailed or the summary, and yeah, there could be discussion depending on who's here.
Right. And the cost and, all I know is what I've seen in the paper, and it sounds like a big project.
Well, I only knew from the gentleman that was here from the school board, and he mentioned that there was gonna be a
A big
big,
proposal.
yeah.
Let's postpone a decision on when for a few minutes and talk about the zoning board. Do we need to, before we get to that, this Primex thing just informational?
I think so.
Okay. I guess an online portal, okay. So, with the passing of the emergency temporary zoning, the select board is charged with appointing a zoning board, at least 5 members. And quite a few citizens have come forward with letters of interest, which is wonderful. I do want to talk about a little bit of clarification. Appointments are usually on a rotational basis, so what has been recommended to us is that we would appoint 2 people to 3-year terms, 2 people to 2-year terms, and 1 person to a 1-year term, so that then the board wouldn't turn over at the same time. I'm going to just read what the New Hampshire Municipal Association attorney talked about in terms of a factor that should be considered. One factor the board should take into account is whether any person seeking appointment publicly opposed or supported the landfill being proposed by Casella. Any such person who can be identified in the public record as opposing the landfill would need to recuse himself/herself from the zoning relief matter sought by Casella due to prejudgment. As provided in RSA 673-14, a member of a ZBA would be required to recuse himself if he is prejudiced to any degree regarding the case. RSA 500-A 12(1)(f), since the expected Casella application will be the principal job of the Dalton ZBA, prudence dictates the members should not have expressed a prior public opinion on the merits of the landfill proposal. Yes, John?
So with that in mind, would Anna be recusing herself from the selection of people for the zoning board since she's taken a position publicly against zoning?
So my understanding is this is not for or against zoning, it's specifically against a landfill.
Well, we're using that in the same application relative to the selection of the zoning board, and that she's obviously proven a bias against zoning, so.
And I told you that once it was voted on, I would go with what the town wanted. And the town wants zoning, so we will work for zoning.
Well, then in all fairness, you would just recuse yourself and the 2 other select board members can make the decision relative to who would be on the board.
Why would I recuse myself?
You're going with what the town wants
The
and,
town wants zoning,
right?
so I will go with the zoning.
But again, you've proven that you have a bias against zoning, so I feel that you should recuse yourself
Well,
from.
I don't really care.
Just bringing it up, I mean.
So I guess I'm not seeing the rationale behind that, because the town voted to have emergency temporary zoning. So,
We don't
We're
necessarily
doing
know
that
what
yet,
her
but-
position is relative to, I mean, I could infer that from her position that she is in support of the landfill. So,
Well, you'd be wrong, wouldn't you? Because you don't know what my position is.
but I have not heard her publicly state.
but
for or
again,
against
we're
the
talking about
landfill.
zoning and the selection of the zoning officers who would be on the zoning board. So again, I'm just bringing that up because I feel she should recuse herself, but that's just my opinion.
Well, the recusal though, didn't that reflect the people that you were gonna put on the
Yes.
board, not
Yes.
necessarily any one of the 3 of you? I didn't read that or hear that, and I admit my hearing is not the best.
It is, it's zoning board members. And we could appoint somebody to the zoning board who has publicly expressed an opinion, but then they would have to recuse themselves if that issue comes up before the zoning board. And so we could be, instead of having 5 members on a zoning board, we could be down to however many.
Well,
So
with
that's
that in
the
mind,
concern.
you could make the case that the town voted, basically, they don't want a landfill. So why can't the town take an official position, they don't want a landfill?
I think that the town, at a town meeting, could take a vote. Right now, I don't know whether the town is for or opposed one.
Well, I
just
think
don't
that
know.
was pretty clear the other night, but
That vote was on zoning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Karen Crowe. Is there an opportunity to appoint alternates to the ZBA in the event, people who have spoken publicly for or against the landfill, and the landfill issue comes before the ZBA? What if we end up with just 2 who've not made a public statement? That's not enough to hold a vote. You need a quorum, do you not? And certainly a tiebreaker. Would there be any alternates?
We could, and I think what I'd like to talk about today is the process for selecting a zoning board. I think we've gotten quite a few letters of interest, but I think it'd be nice to be able to put it out on our website and be clear about what we're looking for, and then discuss candidates next week. The other thing is, I talked to the planning board last week, and they have a lot of experience with land use issues, and they said they would be willing to act as consultants to the select board in our decision-making process. And we as a board have to agree or disagree on that and decide. But, am I misspeaking, Terry, or is that?
No, that sounds right.
And I personally think that would be good, because I think,
We have a lot of good candidates.
yes,
So are you saying, when you said next week, you mean the next
Yeah.
select
select
board?
board meeting.
And that's when they're due, 2 weeks from today.
So we need to, that's a good point, because we need a little bit of time to pull a packet together and review them.
So what date are you setting?
When's the next planning board meeting?
September first.
In 2
Yeah.
weeks, they're,
Yeah, we are having a meeting in 2 weeks. Is that before or after ours?
that is before ours.
Oh, just in case we wanted to,
21st,
you know, approach them.
It is the 21st, and our next meeting would be the 26th.
Oh.
But they did agree last Wednesday that they would help us, you know, if we wanted them to.
Yeah.
So then, how many days do we need to review the packets? Given that
Well,
our
we
next
seem to
meeting
be
is-
getting more in every day.
And if we put it out,
Yeah.
clear
Got
about
one more in today.
Yeah.
what we're looking for, then should we set a deadline for
We could do that, yeah.
Friday, the 23rd? Is that going to be enough time before Monday? Or what are your hours are varying right now for putting a packet together?
How about that
Would it be better-
Wednesday?
I will say, if you do it the 23rd, what I would say is that you would review them Monday at the meeting, or before or after, whatever I get copies to, and vote on them the following, if that's not putting it off too late.
Don't go about the September
That
9th.
way it gives you 2 weeks to look at the candidates, read them, and think about it.
And see if we need to interview them in person or do any other step, or whether it's clear.
And I don't know if you want to share them with the planning board, whether they can assist, or, I mean, you'll have to
Yeah.
talk about that.
Tina is way underneath.
It's right underneath your chair.
I knew that.
There you go.
Thank you.
So is that what you're saying, September 9th would be the time we voted on them?
Yes, is that putting it out too far, do you think?
No, not if we need to, because there's so many people interested in it, we'd have to make sure everybody has a chance to get it in.
And then if there's anybody else out there.
So the September 9th date is what?
That is when we will
Select.
discuss the candidates, do a preliminary discussion on the 26th, which is Monday. And then we'll make the final determination on the 9th. And we're looking at a deadline for submitting letters of interest
On the
Friday, the
23rd?
23rd.
Okay.
And we'll put this up on the webpage. This is what we're proposing, we have not voted on it yet.
I think it's important for you guys to let people that are interested to know what the obligations are for someone to be on the zoning board.
Well, that's what
Yes.
you were saying. you
No, I
wanted.
know, I'm just
Right.
saying
Write
it's,
some packet.
right now, we
Yeah,
have
so
no
know.
idea.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we
You
don't.
know.
And the other thing is, the statutes are clear that it needs to be a Dalton resident. So I think the interpretation of that is probably that it needs to be a registered voter, or somebody who's eligible to become a registered voter.
I think that, you might want to get clarification on that. Resident and voter are two different things. People have property here and they pay taxes.
Now, I know
I
that
think
this,
state statute, you have to be a registered voter to be declared a resident, right? That's what you need to be to get a driver's license.
I believe so.
I
I
don't
believe-
think you need to
Information,
be a
can you
registered
hear that
voter.
again?
I'm sorry?
Can you say that again? I didn't hear it.
I believe by state statute, a resident is somebody that owns land and can register a car, register to vote.
I don't believe that's true.
You don't need to be a landowner.
Yeah, I
You don't
don't,
have to be a landowner,
You have
I
to
think
have a
a resident has to
permanent
be
resident.
somebody who's,
What's
I
the
think,
town?
in town at least 6 months of the year, I think.
Yeah.
But a
And
land-
probably could
I
use
think
some
you still have to
clarification
register.
on that.
Register,
Mm.
register your car and everything,
I
right?
don't believe you have to.
Really?
We'll look into that.
We'll check,
It
because I
would be
think
the
it may
thing to look
be,
into.
The state's just been arguing this for
Yeah,
years, so.
yeah, they were
let
about
me
the
see
college
if I can
kids.
get a definition.
But will you clarify what you're gonna put in, so your website's gonna say exactly
yeah,
what it
Yes.
is?
Yeah.
Right.
yes.
And then will you say anything about what is the job entails? And then, for example, you could take, the planning board has 2 alternates.
Yes,
And this system of attending for 3 meetings and then seeing if they become eligible to become part of one of the alternates. So you could set some system like that in place for the ZBA if you wished. I don't,
We really are so new with this because we never had them.
I know.
It's gonna be, yeah.
Totally new.
and it seems like, the 3 minutes for, 3-minute meetings for somebody to be considered an alternate would be a rule that the zoning board would establish.
So they can set their own rules after
They can in terms of procedures, yes.
okay.
Now, appointments, it is a select board, but
Another point of information, I just confused. Now, the planning board only has 3 members and 2 alternates, but the zoning board has to have 5 members altogether?
Planning board
planning board has
five.
five.
But only 3 at a time are voting?
They need to have at least 3 for a
It's a
quorum.
quorum, not a,
Yes,
for all 5
Right.
members.
but they have 5 members and they have 2 alternates.
Most of the 7 people. Okay, thank you.
And the zoning board has to have 5 members.
And then I think the 2 alternates might be a good thing. I agree with the person, Mr.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good suggestion, and I think some of it will depend on we end up with enough applicants. All right, so, yes,
Can you tell me on what basis you'll make your decision for members?
that's what I was just going to ask my fellow select board, what the criteria would be. I propose that one of them is that they haven't publicly been for or opposed to landfill, so that we're not starting at somebody who might have to recuse himself if that issue comes before the board. So that would be my suggestion. I don't know.
I think that's a good suggestion. I think they have to claim residency in Dalton will.
I guess my question is, what qualifications for an individual are you looking for?
Another thing I think is important is that somebody can be open-minded and listen to people.
If you're asking like a certain education level or something, that's not necessary.
But it's gonna be hard for you guys to, just from an email, to pick a candidate. I think you
Yeah.
probably have to bring it down to a certain group, and then you have to individually interview them, I would say.
I think.
So, I'm sorry, what is your name?
Scott Estel.
I'm Scott. And Dawn.
I think that's, might very well be what needs to happen. Terry, from the planning board perspective, what qualifications do you think are important?
Well, I do agree that, yeah, you need to have an open mind, you've gotta listen to what's being proposed. Never been on a zoning board, so, but yeah, you have to have a reasonable character that, you have to think things through.
Is it my understanding that the planning board really does the suggestions of the rules, and then the ZBA is only if there's a a disagreement or something.
Appeal.
I don't,
So
Yeah,
we never had
to
this,
the
so I
best
don't,
of my knowledge, I believe,
the
yeah.
planning board starts it,
Yes.
yeah,
And
Um,
if it doesn't fit, or if it's out of the realm.
and then they have to go to the
Right.
zoning.
Except I think it's different with the emergency zoning.
Uh-oh.
Well, because all I know is, I mean, in the emergency temporary zoning, if there is not a zoning officer, then the select board makes a
Yes,
preliminary decision,
yeah.
where,
That's
sorry, I'm
relative
not-
to an inspection.
Hmm?
That's in the role of the officer for the inspection. That's not the zoning board. You're misreading that. You're misunderstanding that. The zoning board of appeals, if the planning board is presented with a plan, doesn't match what they need, they go to the zoning board for a variance. It's going to an appeal. You guys are only acting as the officer that would go out in the field and inspect a property as the zoning officer. You're misunderstanding that. You've said that several times and you're not correct.
I will try to get clarification, because that's my understanding from
It's-
talking
The
with
select board does not
attorneys and reading the
take the
regs.
role of the zoning board.
No, it would be for zoning, which is a land use, versus the subdivision, which is the
No,
planning board.
no. You need to get clarification on that because you're wrong.
It's
You're the
quite
zone, you
possible.
would
I mean,
act as the
it's
zoning
same as
officer unless you have a zoning officer that is paid for by the town, which obviously there's no funds for that. So that's where the select board would come in and act as the zoning officer.
Correct, so that if
You would
there
look
is
at it,
a
you would,
zoning application and it's straightforward, the select board would act on it. If there is an exception or a variance, then it would go to the zoning board
Of adjustment.
of adjustment.
well,
I
Get your
mean-
clarification.
We'll get clarification though,
But I
'cause
think-
I could,
I think you
This
guys
is
are on the
new.
same page.
Hmm?
I think you guys are on actually the same page. What she's saying there is what the zoning officer would do. They would look at it and see if it violated the zoning rules,
Mhm.
even if you had to go and inspect the situation.
inspecting though.
Right, but you would decide whether it had to go to the ZBA or not,
Right, so, yeah.
They don't decide if it goes to ZBA, the planning board does.
or the planning board.
That's right.
But until March, we're still going with the emergency rules.
which may be.
Then they have to decide new rules, and then the town decides whether to keep it or stay on the emergency rule.
You have to vote in the new.
We've actually got 2 marches.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
Let's get through one at a time.
Okay, so we have some work to just clarify the roles of the planning board and the select board.
Where do you get your clarification from? Like,
We'll start with the attorneys at the New Hampshire Municipal Association.
And then you're gonna post some of this. And then I'm hearing questions like how often are we expecting this board to meet? How much time is it going to take? The planning board meets once a month. I'm not even hearing that the ZBA may have to meet that often. Because if
think
the
it-
planning board does its job and makes decisions, it never goes over to the ZBA.
And I don't think we know how often it will meet. It has to meet as needed, so.
Yeah, it must be like you call in, you know, we need an emergency meeting or something.
Right.
It's
Or they have
as
a
needed.
standard
Yeah.
meeting and then
Yeah.
they need one.
So Terry,
Mhm.
for instance, how many problems have you had in the past? Have there dealing with properties and different things? A lot or?
Not a lot. I've been on the board for about 5 years. I think the one that comes to mind is a party that was getting a new mobile home. They had an existing mobile home and they wanted to get a larger one so that it could be handicapped accessible. And it was a narrow lot, and so it could affect the setbacks. It was going to affect the setbacks, so it would have been closer to the property lines because it was going to be a bigger mobile home. But, you know, whether or not we have legal authority as a planning board or not, you know, we did have a discussion and we all felt that due to the nature, you know, they're trying to have a handicapped accessible and their lot is already narrow, it's been there for many, many years, and we said we would accept it, you know, it would be okay. It was kind of like having a zoning board variance, so to speak. But we don't see a lot of big issues. There was another case where the planning board regulations require a 2-acre minimum lot size. Now that will be changed with the emergency zoning, because that is 1 acre. But, at the time, a party came along with a proposed subdivision, and they wanted 3 lots, and all the lots were going to be under 2 acres, and we said, well, according to our regulations, you can get 2 lots out of your piece of property, but you can't get 3. And also, as far as the frontage, 200-foot minimum frontage for the planning board regulations, they weren't going to meet it if they had 3 lots. So they weren't too happy about it. They never did come back with a revised plan. So who knows if they get word of it with the,
Of the 1 acre.
the new 1 acre for the, minimum lot size, they might approach again.
And I think, you said Sugar Hill gets about 1 per month. Is that what you said? Was it you who said that, or? Yes.
What measures has the select board made since the town meeting, the emergency town meeting, to find out about this, about the zoning board? Other than the facts, you know, you're gonna consult the planning board, but what have you done in between?
We've
So
contacted
we
the attorney.
attorneys, and the thing is, we have to discuss it in a public session, so we can't discuss it outside of the meeting.
Okay,
So that's why we're waiting until the meeting.
all right. So how long do you think it's gonna take you before you can get into that?
We are thinking to put people in on September 9th, is what we decided.
Yep.
Give us 2
Okay.
weeks to go through, meet again, we'll all get the applications, look them over,
Okay,
so, and have a discussion on the
6.
26.
Right.
okay, thank you.
Yes.
I'd just like to make a comment about the qualifications of the individuals you choose from among the applicants for the ZBA. You mentioned, and I don't disagree, you mentioned that you would feel it's very important to not choose anyone for the ZBA who has expressed a public opinion for or against the landfill. My concern about that is, I think if Casella is accurate and the DES is accurate, that it may be years before they have a plan that's been approved by the state departments to come to our ZBA. You know, I think we may be shooting ourselves in the feet and not accepting some very highly qualified and dedicated to the Dalton community members, potential members, because I think most of the work the ZBA would be doing would be for local